Ever wondered who's really behind the curtains of major political protests? You know, the ones with those professionally printed signs that just grassroots uprising? Well, gather round, dear viewers, because tonight we're diving deep into the pockets that fund the protests and the billionaires pulling the purse strings. We're about to shine a light on the top 5 financiers of political demonstrations, the puppet masters you've probably never even heard of. These aren't your average deep-pocketed donors, oh no. These are the folks who treat social movements like their own personal game of Risk, moving pawns across the board and hoping nobody notices the strings. Buckle up, Buttercup, because things are about to get shady. First up, we've got George Soros, the man, the myth, the walking, talking right-wing conspiracy theory. Now, Soros is a Hungarian-born American investor and philanthropist who's amassed a fortune that would make Scrooge McDuck blush. We're talking billions upon billions of dollars, enough to buy a small country or, fund a few strategic protests. Soros made his money in hedge funds, which are basically casinos for the obscenely wealthy. But here's the thing, he's also known for his philanthropy. He's poured billions into human rights groups, educational initiatives, and democratic causes around the world. Sounds great on paper, right? Except some argue that his definition of democracy might need a bit of work. See, Soros is a big believer in open societies, which again sounds lovely. But his critics argue he uses his open society foundations to push a very specific agenda. They say he throws money at protests and movements that align with his worldview, effectively hijacking legitimate grievances for his own political ends. Whether it's funding pro-democracy protests in Eastern Europe or supporting criminal justice reform in the US, Soros's fingerprints are seemingly everywhere. Now, it's hard to put an exact figure on how much Soros spends on these endeavors. His foundations are notoriously opaque, like a black hole of financial disclosure. But estimates put his annual contributions to various political causes in the hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a lot of protest signs, folks. And that, my friends, is where things get interesting. Because when you start throwing around that kind of cash, you're no longer just a generous benefactor. You're a kingmaker, someone who can influence the direction of entire movements with the stroke of a pen. And that kind of power, well, that's enough to make anyone a little bit suspicious. Next up on our billionaire activist bingo card is Pierre Omidyar, the French-born Iranian-American who founded eBay. You know, that website where you can buy anything from a slightly used spatula to a vintage Beanie Baby collection. Omidyar is another tech mogul, using his billions to, shall we say, shape the world according to his vision. He's got this whole democracy is in crisis thing going on, and he's not afraid to throw some serious cash at it. Omidyar's philanthropic endeavors are primarily channeled through the Omidyar Network, which he founded with his wife, Pam. They've got their fingers in all sorts of pies, from supporting independent media to promoting government transparency and accountability. But Omidyar has also been criticized for using his wealth to advance a particular ideological agenda. Some argue that his support for certain groups is more about pushing a specific set of political beliefs. For example, Omidyar has been a vocal critic of the growing power of big tech companies. But some point out the irony of a tech billionaire decrying the influence of tech billionaires while using his fortune to influence political discourse. If you're enjoying this deep dive into billionaire activism, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Hold on to your reusable water bottles, folks, because our next billionaire activist is all about saving the planet, and maybe, just maybe, influencing a few elections along the way. I'm talking about Tom Steyer, the hedge fund manager turned environmental crusader who spent a small fortune trying to convince the world that climate change is, a real thing. Steyer made his billions at Farallon Capital, a hedge fund that, much like Soros's, specialized in making eye-watering sums of money for its already wealthy clients. But then, somewhere along the line, Steyer had a change of heart. He saw the error of his ways, realized that maybe, just maybe, raking in billions while the planet burned wasn't the best look. So he did what any self-respecting billionaire would do. He started throwing money at the problem. Steyer founded Next Gen America, an environmental advocacy group that's become a major player in the fight against climate change. He's poured millions into political campaigns, supporting candidates who share his views on climate change and renewable energy. He even launched his own short-lived presidential campaign in 2020. promising to make climate change his top priority. Now, I'm not saying that Steyer doesn't genuinely care about the environment. Maybe he does. But it's also worth noting that his environmental activism conveniently aligns with his financial interests. You see, Steyer is a major investor in renewable energy companies. So the more the government invests in green energy, the more money Tom Steyer stands to make. Funny how that works out, isn't it? It's estimated that Steyer has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on his various environmental and political endeavors. That's a lot of solar panels and wind turbines. And it's also a lot of influence over environmental policy and the politicians who shape it. Hold on to your tri-corner hats because we're about to delve into the world of Charles Koch, the billionaire industrialist who's become the boogeyman of the American left. Koch and his late brother David built a sprawling business empire, Koch Industries, that's involved in everything from oil and gas to paper products and fertilizer. Basically, if it's something you use in your daily life, there's a good chance the Kochs had a hand in making it. But Charles Koch's true passion isn't just making money. It's shaping the political landscape in his image. Koch is a staunch libertarian, which is basically a fancy way of saying he believes in small government, low taxes, and minimal regulation. And he's not afraid to spend lavishly to make sure his vision becomes a reality. Koch has been a major funder of conservative think tanks, advocacy groups, and political campaigns for decades. He's poured millions into organizations like Americans for Prosperity and the Cato Institute, which promote free market principles and limited government. He's also been a major backer of Republican candidates and causes, helping to bankroll the rise of the Tea Party movement and the election of Donald Trump. Now, Koch's political activities haven't been without controversy. Critics accuse him of using his wealth to buy influence and undermine democracy. They point to his funding of groups that deny climate change, oppose campaign finance reform, and promote deregulation as evidence of his outsized influence on American politics. It's difficult to say exactly how much Koch has spent on his political activities over the years. He's notoriously secretive about his political spending, preferring to funnel his money through a network of opaque donor groups. But experts estimate that he's likely spent hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars on advancing his libertarian agenda. Now, you might be thinking, Warren Buffett, the folksy grandpa of finance who eats ice cream for breakfast and dispenses folksy wisdom about investing? What's he doing on this list? Well, dear viewers, even the Oracle of Omaha has a political side. And while he may not be as openly partisan as some of the other billionaires on this list, he's still a major player in the world of political spending. Buffett is a longtime Democrat who's donated millions to Democratic candidates and causes over the years. He's a close friend of Barack Obama and was a vocal supporter of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. He's also spoken out in favor of progressive policies like campaign finance reform and higher taxes on the wealthy. But Buffett's political involvement goes beyond just writing checks to candidates he likes. He's also used his influence to shape public policy in ways that benefit his businesses. For example, he's been a vocal advocate for government bailouts of the financial industry, which, not coincidentally, helped save his own company, Berkshire Hathaway, from potential collapse during the 2008 financial crisis. Now, to be fair, Buffett has also criticized the undue influence of money in politics. He's called for campaign finance reform and said that he believes super PACs are a terrible mistake. But he's also benefited from the very system he claims to oppose. It's estimated that Buffett has donated tens of millions of dollars to Democratic candidates and causes over the years. That may not be as much as some of the other billionaires on this list, but it's still enough to make him a major force in Democratic politics. So, there you have it. 5 billionaires who've used their vast fortunes to shape the political landscape in their image. Whether you agree with their views or not, there's no denying that these men wield an incredible amount of power. Their money gives them access to politicians, influences public policy, and shapes the national conversation. And it raises some troubling questions about the role of money in a democracy. When a handful of billionaires can bankroll entire political movements, are we really living in a government of the people, by the people, for the people? Or are we living in a plutocracy where the wealthy few call the shots? And perhaps most importantly, what would happen if these financial taps were turned off? These are questions worth pondering as you listen to the background music for this video, carefully chosen for its uncanny resemblance to the soundtrack of a particularly shady backroom deal. Because let's be honest, that's what we're really talking about here, isn't it? The buying and selling of influence, the manipulation of public opinion, the commodification of dissent. If you found this video even remotely enlightening, do the algorithm a favor and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, share it with your friends, enemies, that weird neighbor who always wears a bathrobe outside. You know the one.